Welcome to Millennium 7 Star, the channel that helps you make sense of military history and military technology. And today's videos is absolutely special. For the first time, we have a guest, and well, a guest that I am sure you will know. And if you don't know him, well, just stop the video, run out, get to understand who he is, and then come back and listen what he has to say. Welcome to Bruce Gordon.
Thank you very much.
So Bruce Gordon, 84 years young, authors of The Spirit of Attack, a very famous book, 132 combat missions in Vietnam, well, a life spent in the United States Air Force. So, well, Bruce, tell us something more about you and your career. We are eager to listen.
Okay, thank you very much, Gus. I'm a retired Air Force fighter pilot, and today I would like to tell you about what it's like to be a fighter pilot in Vietnam and take you with me on 3 missions, in combat missions. But I'll give you a little bit of viewpoint of, first of all, of who I am, then about a little bit of overview of the Vietnam War, because some of you are too young to remember that, but I certainly do. And then I will go through what it's like to be a fighter pilot at a base in Vietnam, then get a little bit on my F-100, taking off, going to the arming area, and first a mission against the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
Oh, okay.
Simple mission.
Really interesting.
Then a mission, again, actually 2 missions, against a real combat situation in Cambodia, where we weren't supposed to be, but we were. Yeah. And it was the biggest single battle that I was involved in, and you can see the effects of air power on it.
Right.
And I'll also show a mission at night under flares, what that was like. So let me go ahead and show my who am I? I'm Bruce Gordon, 15 years as a fighter pilot, F-86s, F-100s, F-102s, and F-106s. And of those, I really like the F-106 best. But the F-100 was a workhorse. It had 4 cannons, 20-millimeter cannons, 800 rounds of ammunition. And those 4 20-millimeter cannons could fire as many bullets as a Gatling gun. They talk about the Gatling guns, but sure, that was 1 gun. We had 4 guns. So I flew my 132 missions in Vietnam and the F-100. I taught ECM at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. I wrote a book, The Spirit of Attack, Fighter Pilot Stories. In the US, you send $20. You can email me at brugor@mac.com. Postage free in the USA, but overseas, like your people in Italy, I think the postage is going to be near $40 for postage. So we have to talk that out before we do that. That's a lot of postage.
Bruce, I confess I bought your book on Kindle.
You did? Okay.
I am guilty.
That's a good way to do it. I really haven't looked at it on Kindle all these years. I haven't looked at it, but I would. That's a good way to do it. So let me first talk about, let me see here, the air war in Vietnam. And this is to give you, and particularly the younger people who don't remember much about it, but we had China up at the top, North Vietnam coming down to the demilitarized zone here. And it was supposedly demilitarized, but actually so heavily mined that nobody ever went through it that I know of. The North Vietnamese would send troops and supplies down the Ho Chi Minh Trail here, and it would come in at many places through the mountains. There were some mountains right in here making the border, and they would be coming into South Vietnam. The North Vietnamese also moved here into Laos. See, most of that Ho Chi Minh Trail is in Laos. So many of our missions were into Laos, but they said we weren't in Laos. So it was, we call it the far western demilitarized zone. Anyway, right here, there was a little base called Chapone, which was quite a target when you ever went into it. And I'll show some other of our bases, but they were coming down here, and they then moved into Cambodia and came in here heading towards Saigon, and we get into the Parrot's Beak area and the Fishhook area down here. But let's look at a more detailed map. Now, this is the same map showing the mountains that we had there but again, we had the Ho Chi Minh Trail come down. Here's Chapone that I said was quite a target if you went to Chapone, and they had more anti-aircraft guns up there than you could think of. But then they came down here, and we had bases at Da Nang and Tuy Hoa, Cam Ranh Bay, Phan Rang, and of course down here in Saigon. I was first at Phan Rang, and then I went to Phan Rang, and later went to Saigon. But here's Phan Rang, the main air base on the coast. And from there, I flew all the way up to Chapone. I got all the way over here in Cambodia, and all the way down south from here. So Phan Rang was a good place to fly from. To give you an idea of what it was like to be a fighter pilot, you came into a squadron. And here is our squadron in Phan Rang, the 612th Tactical Fighter Squadron. And I'm up here with this little arrow here. That's me there. And beside me was the only man who was killed while I was there. And I think of him, I'll have a picture of him and his airplane later. And you'll notice that we had a bar girl. She considered her part of the squadron. We also had, excuse me, we had 5 cleaning ladies who came in and kept our rooms clean. And so we didn't have such a bad life. We had grills back there, and we could take a pickup truck. I'd do it. And the Army had a big depot, and I would drive out to the depot with a pickup truck and walk into their commissary, and I could load up on food. The only thing I had to pay for was steaks and whiskey. So if I bought steaks or whiskey, I had to pay for that, but the prices were quite low. Everything else I could just load up, and I'd come back with a pickup truck loaded with goodies. So we did our own cooking, and Susie here kept the thing going pretty well, and we had nice parties. That's in the days when we had fighter pilot songs, and I loved some people had guitars, and we'd sing fighter pilot songs, and it wasn't a bad life. There was a barrier of concrete, I believe, around our barracks that was about a little bit more than waist high, about chest high. And that meant that if there was a rocket attack, we could lie on the floor and we would be protected from shrapnel coming in from the sides. The Viet Cong, the local communists, would fire the 122 millimeter Katyusha rockets at us, and they were quite inaccurate. They could land anywhere. And the most damage they did was hitting our base laundry. And they exploded outside our officers club once and blew in the front door, but we could still get in. So we weren't too terribly bothered by it. But these rocket shells would come in and they're a story in themselves. The first thing you do when you join a fighter squadron is they take your hero picture. This is my hero picture with the F-100. The hero picture, while it's a nice picture for you, the real purpose of it is a little bit grim. If you get killed, they want a good picture to give to the press. Of course, if you do something great, they might use that also. But that's it. If you get killed, this goes down. They send it to your hometown newspaper. So everyone, at that time, you probably haven't even flown the airplane. They give you a parachute and a helmet, and you go out there and stand on the rail, and they take the picture. Then you're in the squadron until after your hero picture is taken. This is the F-100 going out. This is, it could carry bombs here on the racks. This one has got probably 4 500-pound bombs. You can see the fuses on the bombs up front. The fuse had a propeller that would spin in the air and arm the bomb. But there was a little wire that kept the propeller from turning. And it went up here and was attached to the pylon. So that when you armed the bomb, a solenoid would grab the wire. And so when the bomb was dropped, and it was actually fired out by shotgun shells, it would shoot down, it would pull out the wire, and that would let the propellers spin. So we actually had 2 fuses, one in the front and one in the back. And by selecting our fusing, we could say whether it was going to explode instantaneously on the surface, or if we were going after bunkers, we could select tail only, and it would penetrate about 20 feet into the ground before it exploded. So that would go after bunkers. Now we had 4 20-millimeter cannons. You can see 2 of them here on this side and 2 on the other side, right underneath the pilot's feet. So that when you fire these 20-millimeter cannons, your feet would dance off the rudder pedals because the blast of these guns, the muzzles are right under your feet. So you knew it when you fired those guns. As you taxied out, you went out to the Army area. At this point, they have already pulled out the pins on this is actually my lead. I was flying wingman at this point, and they pulled out his pins, and now everything is armed. The man on the other side, you can see his feet here, arms the cannons. Prior to that, the cannons were not armed. And you can feel him go in there, and he grabs a lanyard and pulls a lanyard and rotates the magazine and inserts the first 20-millimeter cannons shells in the gun. From that moment on, the guns are armed. If you pull the trigger, the guns are going to go off. In the F-106 that I liked, we had a master arm switch that said, nothing would fire until you turned on the master arm switch. But in the F-100, by golly, when you pull those pins and arm the things, now you pull that trigger and the guns are going to go off. No questions about it. And you press the bomb button, and you have to select the bombs. So you do have to select them, and you also have to arm them. Right here, you can see the aerial refueling probe. We used that when we went up to Chapone, and that would catch for a basket. Now, we call this a dog pecker. And it would, you had to stick that thing in the basket, and that was a lot of work. I'll take you along on the first, a mission against the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Now, here, I took this picture myself. This is my wingman going on. Here's his bombs. This time, he has what we call the daisy cutter, a 3-foot long pipe on the front of the bomb, and the front fuse was put on the end of the pipe so that when the bomb hit the ground, it would explode 3 feet in the air. So instead of putting any energy into the ground, making a hole, the blast would all be sideways. And we use this down in the Delta and in places where it was muddy and the Viet Cong were not digging they weren't digging bunkers into the mud. You don't do that. So they're all on the surface. So we would use these in that kind of area. And this is flying into our mission. Now, this time we're going on to what I called the dog's head. And you saw those pictures of the Ho Chi Minh Trail coming in, and they say it's a maze of roads. Well, here they are. You can see the roads coming in. There's the roads like that. And, oh, it's crossing the river there. See that? And there's another one coming down here. This was newer. And it turned out that it ended right here, but we could tell they were going to come down off the bottom and build another crossing here. So right about in here, there was probably a bulldozer. So I was dropping my bombs at the bulldozer here. You see this dog's head, it's easy to describe it because here's the dog's mouth, there's the dog's eye, the back of the dog's head. Oh, in the back of the dog's head, look here. There is the Ho Chi Minh Trail is coming down here, and it's crossing here. See those? Those ripples. The Viet Cong believed that we couldn't see those, but here I can see them from high up. And what they did is they put rocks underneath the water along the river, and the trucks could drive over on those rocks, but they got stuck sometimes. And actually, on this day, there was a truck stuck in the rocks. So he couldn't get away. He was still there. So, but we weren't after him. My wingman was told to bomb some anti-aircraft guns that were located in this area here. So now let's look at the overview of this thing. You can see these long trails. These are B-52 bomber strikes over here. See them
I was going to ask you, to be honest, because they seemed eerily familiar.
Yes, yes. Those are B-52s. All the little pockmarks are fighter strikes. This was what they call an interdiction point. They had to cross here because of other mountains and things like that. So a lot of supplies were going through this area. It was pretty heavily defended. There's a lot of anti-aircraft guns down there. But the anti-aircraft guns couldn't get us until we were in our dive and getting closer. They didn't have the big guns that they had up north. And mostly they were not radar guided. So this is how it was before our strike. And I took this picture just after the strike. There are my bombs going off there looking for that. Somewhere around in there, there's a bulldozer. So I was looking for a bulldozer. And here are his bombs going off. They're crossing the river there, the underwater bridge, they called it. And he was looking for the anti-aircraft guns there. Now, I'm going to talk a bit about Prey to Tongue. That was the biggest single battle I got involved in. As you have the Ho Chi Minh Trail coming down through Cambodia, they went all the way through Laos into Cambodia. Then they came down and they wanted to get down here into what the Parrot Speak area. There was a lot of fighting going on in there. They're coming down because Saigon is down right about in here. So they were coming down in Cambodia, getting into this area here, but they had to cross a place called Prey to Tongue. Or they wanted to, they had been going around it, but there had to be a nice road that went through Prey to Tongue. And they decided to capture Prey to Tongue, which was held by Cambodian troops. And the Cambodians and the North Vietnamese did not get along. By the way, this is North Vietnamese regular army. These are, while in Vietnam itself, we were frequently dealing with the Viet Cong. This was the regular North Vietnamese army coming down. And they attacked Prey to Tongue and drove the Cambodian troops back. I'll show myself as I describe, because I'm going to talk with my hands. So they drove the Cambodian troops back. There was a river, a dry creek, running just north of the town. And where the road crossed it, there was a little bridge. And then it went on into the town. But the Cambodians were still holding the town when I got there. And the North Vietnamese were coming in and they had filled in that dry creek so that they wouldn't get hit by the machine gun fire from the Cambodian troops. They were taking cover in that dry creek. But I came over there with my wingman and I had 4 napalm bombs, which are just perfect for this situation. And when they describe you come over and a forward air controller flying a light plane, he's got binoculars and he's watching everything. He told me about the situation. They had this dry creek and it was full of North Vietnamese troops. So I came down, we came down pretty fast, but we were low. In the F-100, it didn't have anything sophisticated. So I came in, they say 50 feet. It was probably more like 100 feet off the ground. And I don't know why they didn't hit us, because every one of those guys got a gun, and every one of them can see us coming out of the clear sky. So they must have been shooting a lot of bullets at it, but none of them hit me. But I came right down the dry creek and dropped 2 cans of napalm that hit, and the fire rolled down, was held in by the banks of the creek. And it just funneled it right on down the creek all the way to the bridge. So I pulled up, my wingman put in a strike of his own. And as I was getting ready, they said that the North Vietnamese had moved just south of the bridge. And there was a house there with blue shutters. I remember the description well. And they had captured that house and they were in that house. So I was told to hit that house. So I came down again. Now we never fly toward our own troops or away from our own troops, because if we drop the bombs short or long, we're going to hit the friendlies. So we always have to fly across the battlefront. which is again kind of sporting because every one of them, and you're flying right down the battle line. And every one of them's got a darn AK-47, and they're all full of putting a lot of bullets out there, but they never seem to realize how fast we were going. Because when we took bullets, we usually took them in the tail. So they weren't leading us enough. They were just aiming at us, maybe. I don't know what, but they didn't know how to shoot in front of us.
Oh, lack of training.
Lack of training. The bullets would always be in our rudders. We'd pick up bullets in our rudders. But I came on down and dropped my remaining 2 napalm cans. And I had a strike camera that takes a picture out the back of the airplane after you've pressed the button. And it takes a series of pictures showing what's happening. And my 2 napalm bombs hit the side of the house while they were still in the air. And the fire came out the rear windows of the building. So that was gone. So I was now out of bombs, and my wingman was too. So we went back and we loaded up again and came out a second time. Actually, it was the next day. And the North Vietnamese had captured the town of Prey de Tung, and they had moved on down, and the Cambodians were now in a schoolhouse. And it looks like every school that you ever see. There's a school, and there's a big football field in front of it with a hedge around the football field. And the forward air controller told us that there was a Cambodian lieutenant in the schoolhouse. He said he had 200 men in the schoolhouse, but only 40 of them were not wounded. The rest were all wounded. And he said the North Vietnamese were in the hedge going around the schoolhouse, shooting in the schoolhouse. So the hedge was my target. So, first we had to get rid of an anti-aircraft gun that they had set up in the town itself. There was about a 3-story building in the town with a flat roof. And it looked I don't know what it was, but it had a big parking lot out front. And on 3 stories up, they had somehow got a 23 millimeter anti-aircraft gun. And you could tell that one because it made a big flash all the time when it fired. And so we could see the anti-aircraft gun, and they were shooting at our forward air controller, and he didn't like that anti-aircraft gun. So we came in. This time I had just 500-pound bombs. So I went into my dive, and you got that gun flashing at you, okay? So,
I imagine.
He's shooting at you. And so maybe it distracted me, but I released my bombs, and I missed. I missed. The bombs went off in the parking lot. My wingman came in next, and he put 2 bombs, which had delayed action fuses. They went through the roof of the thing. They blew out the lower floors, but the roof sagged, but didn't collapse, but the gun stopped shooting. So we went on down, and now I had 2 bombs left. I dropped 2 bombs on the hedge area, and then I went in with those 4 20 millimeter cannons and poured 800 rounds of high explosive incendiary cannon fire into that hedge. And then I was out of bombs, out of bullets.
What was the distance between the school and the edge?
The school there was across the football field.
So there was, okay, so that was not very far.
There was a distance from the hedge. Yeah, there was other, it was across the football field. The football field was no man's land.
Okay.
And so the hedge was on the outside. So we strafed that. And I went home. I thought that was the last I would hear from that man. So, but it wasn't, because I then read in the Far East issue of Time magazine, this was just coming out by Christmas time, that a South Vietnamese Ranger unit with helicopters had gone in as we were pulling off. And they dropped South Vietnamese Rangers just outside the schoolhouse. And the South Vietnamese Rangers moved in. They said the North Vietnamese ran when they came. And they said that there were the reporter, it was a French reporter with them, and he said that there were about 1,500 North Vietnamese dead in the town, and most of them killed by air power. Now, this is the thing, we needed three things. We needed the troops on the ground that held the enemy into a position where they were concentrated and made a good target. When they're spread over a large area, they're not even a target. So we needed that. We needed the forward air controller to tell us where to drop the bombs. And then we had the attack itself. So we were just part of a larger thing. The Rangers moved in, recaptured the town. The reporter said that in the center of the town, there was a bombed out building with an anti-aircraft gun on the roof. They were all dead. The crew were all dead, but they had been chained to the gun. They chain them to the gun so they don't run when we're coming in bombing them. They keep shooting because they can't run. So they were dead. The North Vietnamese unit then pulled out and went up to the north, and they stayed there for another few months. They had it for a while. And I was watching it. I was only there for a few more months, and I could watch it on the intelligence things as to where the unit was, and they stayed up there. They didn't come back down. I'm running a little bit out of time, so I'm going to make things a little bit shorter. Let me go back here.
It was terrible, but fascinating. It's
well, let me share this again. And this actually wasn't Prey to Tongue, but this is another strike I put on. And this was the Khmer Rouge, the red Cambodians, they call them, Khmer Rouge, who were trying to advance down this road in that direction. And they had occupied this area, and they were firing from this area. My wingman was hitting in this area, and I was strafing there and set some things afire right there. That was what I did with my 20 millimeter guns on that. So this was going to be a long one on a night attack, but I'm running out of stories and time on the night attack. So I wanted to get across to you what it was like to be a fighter pilot in Vietnam. And I also have, my book is called The Spirit of Attack, because it is the spirit of attack. You're going to go down there, and if you have to get down low, despite all those miscellaneous bullets they're shooting around, don't pay attention to them. And so it was not too bad when we got back home. We went up to the club. We had a nice officers club up on the hill, except when they blew in the door with a rocket. It was pretty good. Whiskey was cheap. Beer was almost free. We had nice meals. We really didn't suffer too much. So I'll turn it back to you, Augusto.
I don't know what to say. It was a fascinating story, Bruce. It was, I mean, it was terrible from one side, but really fascinating for people like me, like the audience who are passionate about history, passionate about the history of air power, the history of aviation. And I think that having such a witness of first-hand witness of what it was at the time, yeah, it's an incredible value for each one of us. I mean, I served in the Italian Air Force when I was young, but never saw. I wasn't flying. I wasn't part of the flying personnel, and I never saw combat. But so I can understand how it is to be a military man in a situation like that, and in which you're going to expose yourself to such a great danger. And yeah, it's really impressive, really impressive, Gordon. So what can I say? Thank you very much for your witness. Are you going to come and tell us some other stories, some other?
Alfonso, I guess so. I never run out of stories, but I would like to talk sometime about flying the F-106, my favorite airplane. Well, it never saw combat. We did deploy to Korea, and I have a fascinating story to talk about where the our 4 F-106s very nearly engaged 20 North Korean MiGs. And
okay, stop there. We keep this for next time. I will hold you to that promise to come back and tell us the story again. Mind, I dedicated a long series to the American Deltas, the F-102, the F-106, and all the that was around that. So it was the perfect complement to a subject that we have covered already on the channel. That would be great. Gordon, thank you very, very, very much for having told us this story tonight.
Thank you, guys.